If you ask and they dance around it immediately, oh, run.
Run. Leave the laptop and run. Yes, exactly. Once again.
What is going on, certified homies? Welcome to another episode of From A to B. You have Shiva here, and I'm joined by Slobodan, the Maniac, Manić, who I definitely didn't have ADHD before recording this, and this is definitely not the second take, because I don't know how to say the Maniac Manić really fast.
You did well.
I was so focused on pronouncing your last name properly, I totally butchered your nickname.
Not my nickname, by the way. Anyone listening, that's not my nickname. Please,
You're the
please don't
Maniac.
call me that. Okay. If you say so. What an honor to be here, man. What an honor. I've been begging you for months to be on the podcast, and it's finally happening.
Yeah, you finally wore me down.
Yeah.
The reason I call you the Maniac is because you are the exact opposite of a person that I would say is a maniac.
Thank you so much.
Like, so zen, so, like, down to earth that it's ironic that you're the Maniac.
I'll take it then. I'll take it.
Jokes and nicknames are better when you have to explain it rather than them just being self-evident, so.
Yeah, that's good. I'll take it. I'm not going to change my name legally, but I'll take it. Like, for today,
You have to legally. You have to change your LinkedIn profile. That's required. You did sign the contract before we started recording, so.
Did I?
Yeah, you did. Yeah,
Okay.
he signed it.
Okay.
Yeah. I have the documentation.
We're good. No.
So, Slobodan, you are absolutely a certified homie, a fellow podcaster of the No Hacks show, and a recovering web developer, which I don't know what that means, but I also get it. Like,
burnout. That's what it means. Yeah.
But also you're a CRO consultant, or I guess ex-CRO consultant.
Also work for an agency with clients that have other agencies jump in and make suggestions. So I think I'm qualified. Yeah.
I think so. So the topic for today is snake oil in CRO. What that means, I guess maybe let's define that first. Every episode is just defining terms because otherwise people will yell at you for whatever reason. People want to yell at me all the time anyway, and I totally get it. How would you define snake oil in CRO, like as a top line level?
Knowingly finding an audience that doesn't know about the thing you're going to tell them and like pseudo-scientifically almost explaining to them this is what you should be doing, even if it's not the best for them, even if the only purpose you're doing that is to make some quick money and not actually make a difference. So snake oil, like, you need an audience to bullshit. Basically, that's it.
I guess you're saying there has to be knowing intent of what you're doing isn't as good as what it is, when the reality is it is not good.
Yeah, the reality is you're not going to spend enough time working on it to make it good. You just want some quick money, and knowingly you're telling them, this is going to give you 37.2% boost in metric A or metric B or whatever, when that's bullshit. And it's bullshit. That's when it's snake oil.
I think it's interesting that you say it that way because we will never understand people's intent. I don't think it'll ever be crystal clear that, like, in written documentation, I am lying to you because fuck you. Right? Like, we're never going to know that. In my opinion, what would be productive for this conversation is people selling stuff to people, knowing that they probably don't understand all of the nuances of that thing that they're saying. And that's where maybe it's not snake oil in CRO, but I would say it is maybe taking advantage and or being purposely misleading. So let's explore this topic a little bit more. I asked the TLC, Test and Learn community, and I asked Experiment Nation for some feedback from users who, just tell me what you think is snake oil in the CRO community as a whole. So I got some pretty good answers. Let's just prime that first. So thing one, Stephen Hudspeth, if you have a podcast, red flag, totally aligned. Like, if you have a podcast...
100%. Don't trust those people.
Don't ever listen to those people.
Never.
Like, they're all selling
entertainment purposes, fine. Knowledge, nope.
Especially if you have the second best podcast in CRO.
From A to B, I know. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, all right. Damn it. I set myself up for the dunk, damn it.
Yes, you did.
I should have been quicker with the punchline. Anyway, we are getting off the rails. We got to stay on track here, Slobodan.
You're the host.
The next one, that's a totally serious one. Eddie Aguilar says, when they call it CRO, not CRO, I mean, just, if you call it CRO, unhinged.
Sure, but I wouldn't say it's snake oil in that case. I would say this person is not even trying to sell this. They just listen about this cool thing I heard about. It's called CRO. If you want to learn about it, go there.
Is that a sign that you don't know what you're talking about in CRO if you call it CRO?
You think?
That's a spicy take.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. So those are two obviously joke ones. Let's go into some actual examples of this. So I'm going to mix in some community ones with some of the other ones that I was thinking of. And Slobodan, feel free to add your own snake oil, red flags, whatever, to the conversation. So one that I thought required some exploration or nuance is case studies that seem way too good to be true, i.e. don't pass Tywin's Law. I think that's how you pronounce it. To me, that's a yellow flag. Tywin's Law is basically, if it seems too good to be true, it probably is. If a CRO agency or a CRO analyst is bragging about a test result that's, in my opinion, like greater than like 100% or something, I'd immediately be like, Especially if the metric is a direct revenue driving, like conversion rate or RPV or something, or leads generated. That to me is more of a yellow flag than a red flag. And I know that some people might disagree with that.
I would disagree with that big time because, like you said, let's say you have a 300% boost, whatever metric, like, okay. I don't know, total sales. And I was in a meeting where this was reported by another agency. They said, compared to last week, we had a 400% increase in units sold from 1 to 5. They didn't say that last part, but they did say 400% to the client without mentioning the total numbers. It's a big ass red flag in that case.
So this is where there's some nuance to this, where know your audience. And I had this conversation with like Iqbal and Matt Bichel on this as well around most of the time, if you want to be super technical and geeky with a case study, you show all the metrics, you show p-values, you show all the stuff, right? Like, but if that's on your website, who are you selling to? You might be selling to some of the CRO nerds, but you're probably selling to a marketer who doesn't give a fuck about any of that. They just want to see big, sexy numbers and see big, sexy results. So that's why I say it is possible that a 400% conversion rate lift is achievable. It is possible. It's highly improbable. I tend to operate on the trust but verify. I will believe it, but I will ask further questions to be like, what's the sample size? What's the volume? What's the traffic? Blah, blah, blah. I think that's what we should do. As a safe rule, anything that's above like 50% lift, always be empowered to ask about the results, right? Like that's the easiest answer. Like you can trust that an agency might be able to deliver those results, but let's just ask some questions. Show me the results. Because when you ask for the results, if it's 1 to 4, it's a red flag.
Oh, I have props as well. I'll use them later. If they're sharing this with you or with someone who is like at the top of their game when it comes to CRO, experimentation, testing, whatnot, I don't think they would. When you knowingly choose someone who is not even going to ask and who is going to report to their boss, oh, wow, we had a like 400% lift, then it's snake oil. There's a big difference. There's a huge difference there.
But I want to make sure that folks listening to this episode are empowered to ask those questions, right? It's probably snake oil if they think they could get away with it. But also, y'all listening to this episode, take this information and heed it. I don't know if that's the right word, but I'm just going to say it. Like, listen to the words.
That. Just heed the word.
Heed it. Heed the words that I'm heeding. Make sure that you ask. You could trust but verify. Ask the questions. And if they don't come back to you with any good numbers, that is a true red flag. That is avoid, do not talk to them anymore.
Literally walk out. Yeah.
Yes. Walk out of your room on a virtual call. Like just walk out and just leave a blank room.
Leave the laptop. Yeah.
Okay, so that's a good first one, right? Just big lifts, trust but verify. The next one, Kelly Wortham at TLC called this out. Totally accurate. Guarantees. Right? This is a big one. Whether it's guaranteeing wins, guaranteeing lifts. The only guarantee I would ever trust is a guaranteed implementation of process. Even test velocity is hard to guarantee because complexities and happen. I'm okay if they guarantee like 5 tests a month. And then maybe like 1 month they run 4, 1 month they run 6. Like I'm okay with that generally. But if they guarantee a win rate, if they guarantee an individual test will win, if they guarantee lifts to your marketing programs or whatever, big red flag.
I love the props. I wish I had something like this. I don't have flags, but absolutely yes. Like if the agency or the consultant walks in with a guarantee, run, just run out. However, I'm going to ask you this now. What if the client asks for guarantees?
That might be a red flag on the client.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Do you have a separate one for the client, or is it the same flag?
Well, it's not. I guess that's not technically a part of the episode for snake oil, right? Like, are you a snake oil client? No, you're just a pain in the ass client.
Right, but the reason I'm saying this, maybe some consultants are guaranteeing stuff so they can get the client because the client is going to expect it. I'm not saying any of this is right. I'm saying all of this is wrong. But maybe this is why it's happening. We have that feedback.
Yeah, but I wouldn't want to work with a client that expects guarantees.
Well, you're not the snake oil salesman. Like that's a big thing there, right? Someone wouldn't mind, actually.
Yeah, it's possible. I think so.
Plausible.
I don't know. I still think at the end of the day, like, the only thing we should guarantee is just the process.
The process, and I would add insights and research and knowledge. Like, you can guarantee that.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, it's part of the process. Yeah.
We guarantee that we're going to run a user test. We're going to guarantee that we're going to run tests. But, it's interesting. Some tests might not generate the insights that you expect either. So then do you fault the agency for not delivering? Maybe. I'm kind of talking myself out of what I was thinking. You should guarantee, I think, insights. Because if you're not running high quality tests for your client, unless that CRO or that agency is being blocked into like running a specific test in specific lanes with limited resources or something, maybe they're at a disadvantage. But yeah, I don't know. What do you think?
The reason I think it's okay to guarantee knowledge and learnings and insight is because it shifts the expectations of the client. Like maybe you have a client expecting like, I want 20% boost in whatever metric. And then say, wait, let's talk about this first. Let's talk about how we can deliver this. And then from that, this other thing will probably follow. Don't guarantee it, folks. It's bad. Shiva will hit you. You got a red flag.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, maybe in part of it too is I know we talk about risk mitigation. Maybe the guarantees on like, we will guarantee you will not lose money with this engagement. But like, I don't know how you quantify. Like, that's kind of a hard thing to quantify anyway.
That sounds like a mafia asking for protection services almost.
You might be right. Oh, okay. Well, let's move on to the next one here and the hardest transition ever. I think something that's interesting is kind of adjacent to the case study piece. When you're working with an agency or a CRO and they only fixate on micro conversions and don't ever give you a macro conversion level view. When I say micro conversions, I mean things like add to cart is a micro conversion to the macro of purchasing. Filling out step 1 of a 5-step form is a micro conversion to the macro of filling out the form. I did see this recently in a case study online. They're like celebrating this big case study, this big win. We lifted add to cart rates by like 60%. And like we lifted get to checkout rates by 7%. Like, okay, like did you actually increase money? When you see that information, right? You should have a red flag if they don't call out the macro. If they only talk about the individual steps, this is true with individual CROs, this is true with agencies, this is true with fractional CROs, there should be a keen eye towards the macro. I'm open to the idea that if you are an agency and you say, look, this test lifted some micro conversions but didn't lift the macro because the macro wasn't adequately powered, but the micros were. So let's go ahead and roll out this change.
We're not talking about that, but we're not talking about that here, right? Not at all.
I think that's a fine green flag. So that's the nuance. If they did that, very much aligned, I think that's a fantastic process to follow. But man, if they follow the only show you the micro, and then if you try and uncover the macro, they're like, don't look there, leave it alone.
Have you seen The Wire?
I saw the first season of The Wire.
Okay. Anyway, there's one season, and the Lieutenant Daniel said, juking the numbers. Like that phrase has stuck here ever since I saw it. Basically what they did, there was a lot of murders going on, and the police had a lot of issues with crime rate increasing, number of murders increasing. So what they did, they left the bodies in the homes where they found them until next year. So the numbers for this year wouldn't look as bad. Like basically you're showing me one number and then there's going to be a bad number that follows. Like this is it. Like you're juking the numbers, you're lying the person you're talking to using the numbers. And that's a terrible thing to do. If I just add something to the product page that says, hey, 90% off when you hit checkout page, and then you go to the checkout page, there's no 90% off. Yeah, sure. The increase was like from product to checkout was like 300%, and then nobody buys. And that's easy to do. That's super easy. So ask questions. Like you would ask questions. Most people listening to this podcast would know this is bullshit if there's no macro numbers. But everyone else, like you need to ask, like what is an add to cart? Like what does that tell you? It just tells you that somebody clicked a button. Do you get paid in button clicks?
I love this call out because it's important to understand, especially take a look at the test itself. If the test itself is designed to get you towards that next action, and it's a high quality test backed in research that it's not just getting you to the next action, but it will have rippling effects downstream, you should be able to see it downstream and they should be bragging about it. So to your point, if they only talk about the micro and they ignore the macro, that is a huge red flag that they probably looked at the macro and they're like, nah, don't worry about that. Look at the micro. It's bigger. Those are bigger numbers. But
it's a classic look over there. Like, that's what they're doing.
Totally.
It's total bullshit. It's total bullshit. And yeah, those people, give me the red flag again. It's wave it, please.
Yeah. I would say, honestly, that is a bigger red flag if you're a client and you're being presented test results. That is only micro and not macro. That to me is actually a bigger red flag compared to like the numbers that are huge. Would you agree with that?
I would. The even bigger red flag is if the client asks about the macro numbers and they say, well, we'll get you, we need to.
Oh, yeah, true. If you ask and they dance around it immediately, run.
Leave the laptop and run. Yes, exactly. Once again. So yeah, that would be the worst thing. Yep.
Okay, so kind of adjacent to that, I know we just talked about this in the previous episode with Aaron around kind of like best practices, UX principles or whatever. Something that I think is uncommon to flag as snake oil, but I think very much is snake oil, and I'm sure I'll be challenged on this. It's when people think research is, we tested this on another client. And I'm not a big fan of this. I think this might be a signal.
This is the elephant in the room section because LinkedIn is full of those posts. Like crobestpractices.com, go to that website and be surprised. Like LinkedIn is full of that shit. Sorry to interrupt, but this is the elephant in the room section. I'll just keep this here for this section. Go on.
People watching this clip are going to be like, what the fuck? Why is this?
It's fine. It's summer. It's July. No one cares.
So in this case, what my biggest fear is regarding the snake oil topic is that these folks are basically building out a list of, like a checklist of tests to run for any client they onboard, rather than it being a research-focused CRO program. They might have a checklist that says social proof, test, sticky CTA, big green add to cart button. And that's 3 of the 100 checkpoint checklist that they have of tests that they run. And then if you are onboarded as a client, they just run through that checklist with everyone and they're optimizing for scale.
Exactly.
That is the snake oil. Does everyone who has this, like, it worked for another client, therefore it might work for you, is all of those snake oil? I don't think so. But there is a very legitimate concern of CROs who legitimately think it's just a checklist. Internal, right? Like you hire a CRO and all they have is like, they commented, like, send me the fucking screenshots to get a checklist template, and their idea of CRO is, I'll just test this on any new job that I have. I think agencies are perversely incentivized to potentially try that.
Comment with the word uplift to get the PDF. Like that. That's so how it works. That's how it works. Okay, I'm gonna put down
CRO
the elephant.
in a nutshell, right? There's no research. It's just commenting on LinkedIn templates, and then you did it.
I don't. We could talk about this for a day, I guess. I don't get it. I don't get why it works so well. Like this type of content obviously has reach like almost nothing else on LinkedIn. Like these swipe files that people can, you're tricking the algorithm. People are commenting to get it, I guess. Who cares? Who does anything with those files? Like seriously.
I agree.
You get a checklist, and like, are you supposed to be doing that same thing with your website? And then, it doesn't work and they say, well, every website is different. So why the hell did you send me the PDF?
I explored this with Aaron. Part of it is I think people use it for inspiration. And I have very little qualms with that. I don't personally love it, but I don't think that's snake oil. That's fine. But we explored this with, I'm going to keep on plugging this episode because it was a fire episode.
It was a great one. It's Aaron. Come on.
In this episode, we also discuss like, it's because there's a fake generalizability that because someone else tested it, it is now a proven thing that works across the board. So people take this document with the assumption that because it's been tested, that it can be adopted. And all you have to do is just go through this checklist, adopt these things, and you'll get uplift on your site. That is the purest definition of snake oil. If the assumption is how you are selling it is that. If you're selling it as a swipe file, fine. That's not the fault of the person selling it. You've positioned it as inspo. But if you're selling it as proven test practices, you are the snake oil salesperson.
100%. I mean, it's like selling winter tires in Africa. Like, yeah, it works somewhere. Seriously, but
Aren't there places in Africa that get snowy though?
you know what I meant. Come on.
Checkmate.
You know what I meant. In a warm climate. You want me to say that?
Yeah.
But it makes no sense. Like, if it worked for a shop that sells flowers, why would that checklist work for a law firm website or whatever? Like, it's
Totally.
total bullshit. And sure, you can get more specific checklists. Still, if it worked for one audience, if it worked for one country, one whatever, it's not going to work for everyone. And if you know that, cool. Then it's not snake oil. If you're pushing it to people like, we did this is our checklist, use it for inspiration. I love that. That's great. I mean, Linda Busto says Ecom Ideas website, which is great, but it's ideas to get you started. It's not this is going to work for you. Like that's the whole point.
So let's add snake oil on top of the snake oil. Attaching revenue gains to these individual tests or practices or proven things. So I've seen some companies or some sites who will like, not only is this a proven test, then they'll say the estimated uplift for implementing this thing is between 3% and 7%. I'm like,
Sweet.
I wish I had more red flags, so I'm just gonna wave this one
yeah.
extra hard.
I mean, that we talked about a similar one, like guaranteed results. Like this is kind of falls into that bucket. How can you guarantee anything? Like how, if you haven't worked with the client already, if you know nothing about the client, you're just pitching to them. How can you guarantee anything? Like maybe there's something happened to that industry specifically that everything's crashing. Like how can you guarantee whatever?
And I think the flip side of that is that these agencies should really just be focusing on the process of the research, right? If any conversation with an agency, with a CRO, is not heavily centered around research of your own clients or your own website, your users, whatever, that's the red flag. The green flag is when when you're interviewing a CRO, when you are the CRO or you're trying to hire an agency or whatever, that person should be focusing pretty exclusively on like, this is the research or this is the process of research I will implement. For me, a big red flag, I guess it's yellow unless they clarify. But if I'm interviewing the CRO for like a job, like, you know, role on my team or whatever, if I say like, give me test ideas or like, what would you test? And the first thing out of their mouth isn't, I don't have the data, so I'm not quite sure, that's a red flag. If they say, I would test this, and if I ask why, and they're like, well, it worked with my other client, I'd be like, So you assume that everything is transferable. Now, if they say that and they say, also, by the way, like I have no research, so I would conduct research and validate. Again, the conversation should be literally centered around research.
100%. I would say it's a yellow going towards red flag. Let's say that.
An orange flag.
Orange flag. Yes, thank you. If they're just trying to sell you CRO, like a black box thing called CRO, without talking about user research, user testing, like we're going to CRO your website and stuff like that, I think that tells you that not a lot of deep work is going to get done.
So I love this. Let's go down this further.
Yeah.
I'm going to role play here with you. You are a snake oil agency.
Yeah.
Slobodan, the Maniac, Manić.
Love it. Yeah.
You are a snake oil salesperson at Snake Oil LLC. I don't know.
SnakeOilCROservices.com.
SnakeOilCROservices.com. Fantastic.
Taken already. I checked.
I am a client. Sell me your snake oil CRO. Like, what does that look like?
Right,
How
okay.
What would be an idea? So, like, I want people to see, like, this is how people might sell the CRO.
Oh, I love this. I can just show up and say, hey, I'm a CRO expert. Like, I'm a life coach for this specific problem you have. And then I can say, the whole point is that I'm supposed to talk to you and understand how little you know about this before I can try to sell it to you. Like, that's me doing research, but not with your website. I'm doing research with you as a client. If I smell that you have no idea what I'm talking about, you just want to CRO pimp up your website, money. I'm going to sell you bullshit over bullshit on top of bullshit. If I realize that you know, and it's going to take a lot of work for me to actually deliver results and show you something, I might try that or go for the next client. Like that's how it works. Because you need to find someone who you can bullshit easily, quickly.
Yeah.
And that's how it would go. I would talk to you and I would see, what have you done with CRO? No, we haven't. Our developer ran a few tests, blah, blah, blah. Okay, we're going to set up this test. It did 25% uplift for my previous clients or whatnot. And if you respond positively to that, we're going to sign a contract. It's going to be 1 month, 3 months, 6 months. It's because you're not going to tolerate the bullshit much longer than that. And then I'll do that. I'll move to the next one.
It will be beneficial for you to suss out snake oil CROs and agencies or whatever by acting dumb and asking these dumb questions too, right? Like,
Yeah,
so like
that's cool.
we've given some pretty concrete tips so far, right? Like case studies, prod on case studies, look for guarantees, look to see if they can't answer macro questions, stuff like that. Make sure they have sound processes, like ask about their process. Don't ask about results, ask about the process and nerd out on it. But if you act dumb and then you make them explain it and they can't explain it, that's the red flag. That's the reddest of all red flags.
But that's great advice for clients and people hiring CRO agencies or consultants. I think that's really good. To go back to the beginning, I did go to Wikipedia page for snake oil salesman because I'm not an American. That's not my tradition. It's your country. I don't know about it. It's what you guys allegedly did 150 years ago. These people would show up with a bottle that has something that's, I don't know if it's real snake oil. Maybe they didn't even oil the snakes or whatever, however you do it. This will solve every problem you have. What does everybody in that audience have in common? They have a problem that they don't have a solution for. So you need to find that person that has issues with their website. Something's not working. They spent money, they're losing money, and they need a quick fix. And this is when the snake oil is sold. This is when it's easy to sell it. You're not going to get a $50,000 a month contract selling snake oil. That client knows what they want. But you can sell like $1,000, I don't know, whatever, like a week or a few days of work for $1,000 or $2,000 to a client that's bleeding money and needs to solve a problem quickly. And you're not going to deliver if you're selling snake oil. But you don't care because there's another client like that. So that's what it boils down to.
It's just at the end of the day, you're taking advantage of people who probably don't understand.
Knowingly, yeah.
Before we wrap, I want to call out a couple other listener comments from TLC that had some pretty interesting comments. So these are process-related things. I think a large bucket of these snake oil things are pretty exclusively focused on process. It's not the results. It's not the case studies or whatever. It's literally, how are you actually doing the CRO things? Like you rightfully called out, if they sell you this black box CRO thing and you ask them, what is your process? And they're like,
making things better.
Yeah, right. Like, we'll optimize your site through conversion rate. Like, if they don't really have a good answer and you really nerd out on process and say, give me your process, explain every little detail, and they can't give a good answer, or they say like, so Ryan called this out. He's like, people who call like multi-arm bandits AI. If they just sprinkle AI on everything or machine learning, fucking run. Like, if that's their answer to like, what is your process of CRO, and they just, AI is mentioned in the first 2 sentences of their reply, run.
That's bad. Yeah.
The reason being, one, AI is just unfortunately becoming a virus in our field. There are certain things that I think AI and machine learning can be helpful for, but the unfortunate thing through the hype cycle, AI is taking over too many tasks that AI should not be taking over, and that's the issue. But even tactically speaking, with Ryan Luck's comment, he says like, calling multi-arm bandits AI, and multi-arm bandits basically like auto-allocating traffic to whatever variation's winning the most. That is a short-term exploit thing. You will not be able to learn anything from a multi-arm bandit. And there are rightfully things you can multi-arm bandit that makes sense, but there are tools now, snake oil tools, selling like the death of CRO, multi-arm bandit's the way now. That's snake oil. Multi-arm bandit is a tool that many big testing companies offer, but you don't replace multi-arm bandits with testing. You use both. You don't replace a hammer with like a screwdriver. You need both, and they have different use cases. That was kind of like comment 1. Another comment I'm kind of interested to hear what your thoughts are, Slobodan, is Georgiana Hunter Cousins on Experiment Nation called out that tests are run on low traffic pages, which again, that's another process issue, right? there is a fine line between you need enough traffic to run a test at a bare minimum, but there's also maybe a perception that you need 200K sessions to run a test. I think that's way too high. You can run tests on lower traffic volumes. You just need to do bigger changes. You'll have to be able to detect bigger changes. So what do you think about that? Do you think it's snake oil if testing agencies or CROs are coming in trying to run tests on pages that have low traffic, quote unquote?
Let's define low, because if it's low but you can test big changes and they explain that, what's the harm there? Like I don't see a problem. I don't see a problem there at all. If they like the example I told you from the agency I worked for, where the other agency was, we went from 1 to 5 and like they report the percentage increase. Like why? Like they're just using that to lie. If they're just running a test and it's giving you like a 37.8% uplift and you have 100 sessions, so like if it was one order less than what you got, it would be maybe even worse than the original version, whatever. I think if they're honest about it and upfront about it, and like maybe the client will still insist, and then they tell them, yeah, okay, we need to do a completely different page to detect anything, that's fine. But like bullshitting with 100 sessions, red flag.
It can especially be a red flag if they brag about testing velocity and they'll tell you how many tests they've run.
Yeah.
When instead they're running small scale tests on, like, if you run a bunch of singular copy edit tests on pages that get like 100 sessions a month, 100 sessions a month, even 100 sessions a week. If you're running a bunch of small changes on those and then they brag about their testing velocity, that to me is an example of the intent to deceive of velocity. I mean, there's a flip side of this too, right? If, you have an annoying CRO client who's like, we need to up our velocity. If you're looking for a snake oil in a CRO agency, point them to a page that has low traffic, like 100 sessions, and then tell the agency, like, we want to run a test on this page. What would you recommend? And then nudge in 100 sessions a week or a month or whatever. If they don't immediately tell you, this page is kind of low traffic, I don't know if we could test anything, red flag.
That's great. Yes.
Huge fucking red flag.
The episode's not about snake oil. It's about snake oil detector kits that you can use and like detect
100%.
yourself.
Yes, I'm gonna write that down.
That's useful. That's better. You nailed it with that one. Like if you can just show them. Don't even tell them about the traffic. Just tell them, I want to test this page. I want to test some elements on this page. Can you help me with that?
See, I would add it because it sets the trap better. I hear what you're saying. Like
No. They should. If they don't even tell you, they should find it themselves and tell you, because they'll look at the analytics.
I'll disagree. So I know what you're saying. They should do that. On the flip side, I've been on the other side where there might be an assumption that that the agency gets, that it's a high traffic page, or maybe there's a paid search campaign that they'll dump a bunch of traffic to. So there might be an assumption that I think is fair from the agency side that there will be enough traffic, so offer ideas. To be fair, they should ask, but I don't think it's unreasonable for them to assume at a baseline, if you're just asking for ideas, that will happen. That's why I say have it exist, have it be noticeable, but don't explicitly call it out, because then they should notice that. If you give them all the information to make an educated decision and then they don't catch it, that's a red flag. I love setting little traps like that.
I can tell. Like you thrive on this. Another thing I would add, talking about testing velocity, like the snake oil crowd, the people who are prone to buying snake oil, testing velocity is not a phrase that matters to them. Like they care about revenue lifts. They don't care about programs and all that stuff. So I don't think selling testing velocity is selling snake oil, because like you need to have a client who understands the process, because velocity is a metric in the entire process.
I think where it might become snake oil is you read the articles about, let's say you're kind of understanding CRO, you might have read articles about like, you have to test everything because you never know what will happen. Naturally, someone might conclude, oh, okay, I need to test everything. That means I need to have high test velocity to be able to test everything. And when you test a lot, you'll learn a lot. People might make the connection that testing velocity is important by means of testing and validating as much as you can is valuable. I get that, but I also understand that maybe on the maturity side of things, they're low maturity. They may not even care about velocity. They're like, I just want to ship a test and I want it to be good and I hope it's the best,
Yeah. I don't know. I wouldn't argue over this, but I think the person buying the snake oil is someone who never did any kind of CRO ever.
You're probably right. Yeah, you're probably right.
I think
That's
this
fair.
is where you sell the Snakeoil, because I have the domain snakeoilcroservices.com. I'm an expert in the field now, thanks to you. But I think that's who you sell it to. The people who are going to fall for this are people who never looked at CRO. Maybe they installed Google Optimize. Their developer set up a script for Google Optimize, and they had like a button test 6 years ago, and that's it. And the script is still on the website. That's who is prone to buying this, not someone who thinks about testing velocity.
Aligned. I think that makes sense. Let me throw out a couple other more. Related to MABs, something that might be Snakeoil adjacent is if the agency is trying to run like more than 3 or 4 variations in a single test. If they just keep on throwing a bunch of shit at the wall and see what sticks, kind of the spaghetti testing. To me, especially if you don't have a lot of traffic and then they're like, let's throw a bunch of variations. And especially if those variations aren't core to like a unique hypothesis. If it's like, on this product page, we're going to test the button in one variation. We're going to test the headline in one variation. We're going to test we're going to just test a bunch of shit. And like, it's all going to be one test. And then if one wins, great. Like that to me is a lack of strategy, which equals Snakeoil adjacent. I'd say probably yellow flag with Snakeoil adjacent.
I mean, that screams they did no research. And maybe there's a reason.
True.
Maybe there's a reason. Maybe there was no budget. Maybe the client just wanted to test and see what sticks because they need solutions fast.
True.
Who knows? So I wouldn't say necessarily it's a red flag. It could be. There are cases where it is. But maybe they had to do it that way.
All right, I got one last one. It's pretty tactical, but basically just like, this is a trap you could set for an agency or a CRO and be like, give them results and show SRM. So have it be like 5,000 users and then 10 conversions or whatever, 100 conversions, and then 7,000 users and then 140 conversions.
Okay.
But whatever, like do the math to figure out this actually statistically significant lift, but don't call out the SRM and say like, what would you do with these results or something? A good agency would flag the SRM. A good CRO would flag the SRM. So that's an easy trap of like, you know your shit if you flag it. Now, solving for SRM can be very difficult. And I don't want to go into the weeds about that because that's a very complex topic.
I don't want to talk about that.
It's a very nerdy thing. But I think at the top level, being able to just be like, raise your hand and say, yep, I see SRM. I know it enough to see it. And we should not trust these results. Even though they look like they're statistically significant, they should not be trusted.
I disagree. The client and the Snakeoil salesman will not even know what SRM is.
Which is where, back to the point, right? Like you can detect the Snakeoil if you show them that.
The episode is not about Snakeoil. It's about
Detecting.
It's warning signs for Snakeoil agencies. How to avoid clients that will get you busted. Like basically, like it's a tutorial. Yes, in that case, yes, absolutely. But SRM is for people selling like swipe files and checklists. Like, are you kidding me? They will not even look at this. The client will go completely unnoticed. Like the test will be implemented. Like we have a winner, and then why isn't this actually a winner once we implement it? Well, who knows? Maybe something changed. No one will go back to look into that if we're talking about Snakeoil territory.
If we had to quickly summarize here, I think the ideas here is that focus on process. And there's some tactical things like low sample size, make sure they focus on research, not results. Probe the numbers, make sure you actually have backing behind the numbers. Don't focus on micro versus macro. If they have big numbers, be skeptical, ask deeper, whatever. On process side, make sure they focus on research. Like any other parting thoughts before we jump into shit you need to know?
No, that's good. That's perfect. That sums it up perfectly.
Okay, Slobodan, the Maniac Manić, what is it time for?
It's time for shit you need to know.
All right, let's go. Okie doke. Before we get started in this section, I love the listener submission questions that y'all have been submitting. I want y'all to submit more questions. Would love this. Would love to have this section be a little bit more interactive with y'all. So if you have listener questions, please go to, don't give me shit for this, tinyurl.com/ask from A to B, or just DM me. That's fine. I'll happily.
That's why you're number 2.
Yeah, because I don't pay. Yeah, that's fine.
You don't have
whatever.
a website.
So please submit your listener questions there. That'd be great. All right. So this week's shit you need to know comes courtesy of Tim Mehta. Tim, I don't know how to pronounce your name. I'm brown and I should know how to pronounce your name, but I suck. It is what it is. I know how to pronounce no one's names. So Tim, you had this post. It said, quote unquote, we've tested it before and it didn't work. And then kind of just like an angry emoji face. You go into some ideas of why this is kind of not great and how to explore it. But I think this is relevant to the whole conversation because I think this is adjacent to snake oil, especially the conversation around like, we've tested it in other clients, so we're just going to use it for you and copy and paste tests because efficiency rather than uniqueness in research. So a couple other things you've kind of explored here, Tim, is let's ask how many tests did we run for, some specific idea? Because if you've only run to tests, perhaps you want to run a couple more. What were the users that you targeted? Because perhaps you were targeting a smaller subset of users and you need to broaden it. Or perhaps you were targeting one subset, maybe paid search, and instead you need to target organic and direct or different cohorts. And then the third one is what's your metric you're using for success, which is, back to our snake oil detection. Maybe you're targeting micro when you should be targeting macro. So anyway, what do you think, Slobodan? We've tested it and it didn't work. What are your feelings about this?
Can I go back to the main topic, the snake oil thing?
Let's do it.
We tested it and it didn't work for us is what happens after a client works with a snake oil CRO agency.
Oh, I love this. Fuck
The
yeah.
the callbacks. That's why I'm better than you at podcasting.
All right. Well, that does it.
No, but seriously. This is exactly what happens. This is why bad web dev agencies, bad CRO agencies, like when they do something wrong to a client, they will tell you that. Like we tried CRO 7 years ago, it didn't work for us. And that's why these people need to be called out, eliminated, whatever. And
eliminated?
And not literally.
What the fuck?
Not literally.
Not a CRO hitman here.
Hey, if anyone, that's you, not me. Come on. But basically, it's dangerous for this reason. Yeah. And I know the post is not about this, but it applies to this even better, I think. Because once a client gets burned by an SEO agency, whatever, we tried it, it didn't work for us. Yeah. I've heard that a lot of times. Yeah. And trust me, it's very difficult to convert that client, conversion rate, and get them back to a client who wants to do CRO.
Man, you are so right. When you have a client who has been, and maybe that's why we want to empower these folks working with, any agencies or CROs to not be burned, but rebuilding trust is harder than like 100%. Losing it, right? So easy to lose, incredibly hard to gain. And I think that is the reason why the motivation for me wanting to record a topic on this episode is because the snake oil affects us. Just like you said, it affects our ability to do basic things like run tests and run validations because other people come in disguised as us and hack what we do to total bullshit. I don't fault the person being burned by the snake oil to be like, fuck this, I'm never doing it. I don't fault them. I fault the people coming in disguised as us saying we're CRO. And like, it sucks for us and it makes our life harder when other people, I'm sorry, just preach, brother, preach.
First of all, I was shocked and like appalled when you asked me to do a snake oil episode. Like, what does that say about me? But then I remember our conversation. We talked about this a lot on LinkedIn. But yeah, this is the word. This is the other side of it. Like, it's not just the salesman. It's about the person that drinks the snake oil and then doesn't take the regular medication they're supposed to be taking. And then 5 years down the line, hey, we tried that. Like, someone called CRO whatever they did to us 5 years ago. It's bullshit, and my condition got worse. And my website tanked, and I'm never going to do that again. This is the danger. Like, this is what needs to be not eliminated, prevented.
The behavior has to be eliminated.
The behavior, yeah. That's fair. What I meant. Yeah.
That's not what you said, brother.
I know.
Anything else in particular stand out with Tim's post around, like, tips or tricks on addressing more tactically?
Right.
What can we do when someone talks to you about we've tested it and it doesn't work? What are some things you might tell that person to say,
Yeah, I mean, to me, that goes back to ego. Like, I tried it once and I failed. Like, my try was perfect. Everything I did was perfect and it failed. How can you think that? Like, how can you say that?
Yeah.
So I would say that's kind of the bottom of this all. Like, you think you did everything perfectly on the first try and like maybe find another career. Not Tim.
No, Tim's great, of course. Cool. All right. This was a long but a very fun episode. The vibes were absolutely immaculate. Slobodan, thank you so much for jumping in and recording with us. I appreciate you so much for doing this. Disclaimer, we do not condone the violence that Slobodan is advocating for. So if you have any issues, reach out to Slobodan and dox him personally, not myself. I do not want people eliminated. Slobodan, I'm not going to let you have any rebuttal to that, Slobodan. I'm just going to keep going. Slobodan, where can the people... Slobodan, where can the lovely folks find some of the cool stuff you're working on?
Number one is if you go to CRO podcast charts and you look one spot above from A to B, you'll find No Hacks Show. So you can subscribe to that podcast and listen to that podcast.
I'm going to need to see receipts on that.
Me too, because I don't have them.
You're just throwing bullshit in there. All right.
Of course. So subscribe to No Hack Show. It's like a sister podcast to From A to B. Like we
very much a certified homie podcast. Y'all should
talk about podcasting all the time, me and Shiva, and like subscribe to that. Find me on LinkedIn. Hopefully the link will be in the description or whatever.
Yes.
Also, because I've done a lot of podcasting in May and June. I overdid it a little bit, so I had to optimize my processes, and I built some tools that I'm going to be sharing over time that maybe even you can find useful. So go to podpacer.com. There's a wait list, which means you have to wait and see if this ever becomes a public thing. So if you want to know more about that, go to podpacer.com and like say hi on LinkedIn. That's the easiest way.
Certified homie Slobodan, the Maniac Manić, and certified homie podcast of No Hacks. Y'all go check out that stuff. Check out everything he's doing. Slobodan, thank you so much for hopping on.
Thank you for having me.